At the 2019 Heart Rhythm Society trade show, as you're walking the floor, I would really ask you to take a step back and look at some of these new technologies that are being shown to the marketplace and ask yourself two questions. Are you going to get a better clinical outcome? And it's going to take you less procedure time. When I walked the trade floor last year, I was amazed at the amount of new technology that's coming out to the marketplace. And while I'm not a clinician, it wasn't like it was a quantum leap in clinical effectiveness, yet it was a quantum leap in cost. So I would implore everybody that's walking that trade show floor, as you're thinking about reprocessing in the market and your area of specialty, who's going to pay for this new technology that's coming to market? Because the insurance companies aren't looking to pay for it, and the government's not looking to pay for it. And are you really getting the value of the increased price you're being asked to pay? And I would say, if I'm running a facility, I'm willing to pay more for a product if it's got better clinical efficacy that's proven or reduces my procedure time, and that's proven. I'm willing to pay more for that. But I'm not willing to pay more for something that gives me basically the same clinical outcome and takes me the same amount of time. And in some cases, more time because the product is more technically advanced than what they were using before. I think what we're seeing happening right now is the government's got a keen focus on pharmaceuticals. And we're seeing some new programs that are coming out on how are we tracking drug prices, what do the drug companies have to do. The device companies are going to have the next wave is going to happen to them, right? Pharmaceutical companies, the government can't focus on everything at once. So right now, today, the biggest bang they can get is on pharmaceuticals, because that's a big piece of the number, right? Once they start to get that under control, the next wave is going to be the device companies. And somebody's going to have to answer the bell for why does stuff cost so much. Reprocessing is going to, in my opinion, going to continue to grow. And it's going to go around the high-end devices. Because one thing's for sure not going to change. The hospitals aren't going to get paid any more money. And the manufacturers aren't sitting around the table thinking, how can I sell my devices for less money? And those two things aren't going to change. So reprocessing is going to have to grow, and I think companies like Innovative that are focused on niche areas of the market are the ones that are going to be able to deliver the most value. I think the reprocessing market has vastly changed in my 25 years in the business. I mean, I remember way back we were doing things like suture and low-end, what I call patient care items. Right? They have a ton of competition in that space right now. The pricing has come down. So reprocessing, I think, played a role in hospitals being able to buy pulse oximetry sensors for under $5. Compression sleeves for under $8. I think the market now is going to start to shift to the higher end devices that traditionally have not been reprocessed. The 510Ks are more expensive, they're more difficult, they're lengthier to do, but they're going to drive the savings. When we look at savings by hospital for the EP lab, they really are all over the map, and they're dependent on how many procedures that lab's actually doing. We've got some hospitals as small as $100,000. We've got some over $1 million. But the point is the savings from this are substantial. I think when you look at where the savings are being derived from, the savings are being derived from the higher end catheters. Because what we've seen happen on the lower end market is more competition by manufacturer on things like diagnostic catheters. But as you start getting up into the more sophisticated catheters that traditionally have not been reprocessed, the price point stayed high. So that's where the savings really are. That's where we're generating the savings. There's probably 8 or 9 different catheter families. So when we talk about the reaction of the original equipment manufacturers, they say, well, we really don't have a problem with reprocessing except for these devices. And the fact of the matter is that those devices that they don't want reprocessed generate about 80% of the savings. So the fixed curve diagnostics and the low end catheters, they really don't care about those ones. But their higher end catheters that are $2,000, $3,000 a shot, they don't want those reprocessed. And that's where the savings are being generated from. Well, I don't think the barriers have changed over the years. The barriers that everybody faces in reprocessing are the same, right? You've got the manufacturers who are trying to sell their new technology that don't want it reprocessed. And you've got the hospitals that need to be able to save money to battle off, we've got decreasing reimbursement, increasing costs. So the barriers I don't think change at all. It's you have to be able to tackle the objections the manufacturers help plant in the physician's mind and in the clinician's mind. I think what we've seen the reaction of the OEMs, they really tackle two things. They either try to chip the device or putting some sort of EEPROM chip into the device. So it can't speak to the actual mapping system, and we've been able to figure that out. Or they'll say we'll withdraw case coverage. And the labs over the years have become dependent on some of these reps in certain instances to be able to help them run the mapping system. And again, we've got some good dialogue and discussion around that, but for me, it's unconscionable how J&J, that owns Biosense Webster, can say to people, we're going to withdraw support for your cases, when you look at how much money J&J is making off of each hospital every single year. And then what we see happening in the EP labs is manufacturers saying, oh, these people don't know how to calibrate the catheters, they don't know how the system works, and that's just not true. We have to go through the FDA process the same as they do. So we have to be able to prove those three things, right? That we can clean the device, that we can function test it, and that we can sterilize it. So we've got great science behind it. We need the opportunity to be able to sit down and show that to the clinicians. And if the manufacturers really had proof that our devices were substantially equivalent to theirs, they wouldn't be talking to the hospital. They'd be going right to the FDA and lodging a complaint. So again, when we talk about barriers to entry, and we've had this in the old days with harmonic scalpels and the generators, anytime one of the manufacturers want to debate us on the safety and efficacy of the device in front of the hospital clients, we're all for that anytime. So Biosense Webster, you want to debate whether we can do your Cardo 3 system, let me know when, and we'll be there. The great thing about this space with FDA regulation is the amount of science that's around this is pretty deep, broad and deep. So I think anytime they say they've got an issue with how it technically works, we can back it up with science. And science are facts, and they're stubborn things, right? So for hospitals to be able today to survive in the world of decreasing reimbursement and increasing costs, they have to be able to look for every savings opportunity. And the biggest one that these EP labs have, there's two choices they have. It's either staff or stuff. You either need less people, or your supplies have to cost less. And they have the people that the labs that have been able to push back and give some resistance have won and are saving the money. And the other folks that aren't taking them on or willing to do the battle aren't getting all their savings. And we've tried to help facilities by showing them what their colleagues are doing. But at the end of the day, the lab has to be in control of what's going on in their facility, as opposed to letting the tech from the manufacturer run the lab. I think as we look across the broad spectrum of our customers that we have, we've got a handful of them that have been very, very aggressive on taking back control from the manufacturers. And we see it in a couple of things. One, an aggressive training program to train their staff on all systems. A move from having a sole source type of arrangement with somebody to multi-play. And what that does is when they seem to have more competition in the lab for the business, everybody behaves themselves. Right? Very different than we would see in a normal world, right? In a normal world, if you have 85% market share with somebody, you're treating that person very nice. It's almost like the more share they have, the more they hold your feet to the fire and are aggressive with you in their tactics around negotiating. And I think when you look at some of the labs that are high performing, they are using multiple systems. Their staff is well trained, and they're making sure the catheters they purchase are the ones that can be reprocessed. The issue around training, I think, is similar to what we saw has happened in the orthopedic world. In the orthopedic world, the devices and the systems have become so complex, a lot of hospitals cannot even do the procedure without somebody from that company being in the room, watching and helping and assisting in it. In the EP labs that have kind of seen that play out in orthopedics where they've lost control, they've made a stand right up front, they're going to train their people. And it's not a quick solution. You have to have a program in place, and we've been able to show that to hospitals, and you have to have a commitment to training. And you also have to hold the OEM accountable to train your staff and the equipment that you're buying. So, and we've heard some folks out there's some training that's being offered where you can train somebody in 3 weeks. Realistically, you can't train somebody on a sophisticated mapping system in 3 weeks. It probably legitimately takes 6 months, but technology is always changing. So training, ongoing training, is not a destination. It's a strategy of how you're going to run your lab.